What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Thee CrazyFaceUno Podcast, where everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. What's your story? If you'd like to support the show and help us tell more stories like the one you're about to hear, please visit CrazyFaceUno.com today. There, you can purchase items from our online store or donate. As always, I'm your host, Shane McNeely, and boy, are you in for a treat today. It is my honor and privilege to introduce our guest today. Please welcome Hayley Young. Welcome, Hayley.
Hey, Shane. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Of course. Happy to be here.
We were like deep diving into life already before we got recording. Yep. I was like, we got to do this right now. Hayley, we met
hit record.
Yeah, we got to hit record. This is good stuff. And like I said, like I'm an open book. So we were talking about CrazyFaceUno and my ideas and thoughts and where I'm at. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we were just kind of starting to dive into our lives and kind of catch up. And we first met at Invisible Children. Mm-hmm. And we've narrowed it down. It's probably been somewhere between 6 and 8 years.
Yeah, wide time frame, but whose memory is that good anymore?
Yeah, right. I mean, I've slept a couple times since then, so yeah. But it's great. You were just starting to ask. I am in Florida. I'm in Coconut Creek, Florida. My wife and I moved.
Sounds like a Mario Kart level.
Right? It does. It should be.
Coconut Creek.
Yeah. With coconuts dropping on your head or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And here there's so many, like where I live, there's so many like iguanas and ducks, so they could just be like little roadblocks as well. You know?
Yeah. I see it in my mind's eye.
Oh, me too. That's good.
Yeah.
Hey, Nintendo, bring it on. Like, let's go. I'll help you design it.
How did you end up in Florida?
Yeah, my wife got a promotion. So the company she worked for a medical manufacturing company in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they have essentially like a sister company down here that they bought, and they needed some help down here. So they asked if she was interested in moving, and we talked it over, and we're like, let's do this. And it just made sense. It was the right decision for us for sure. Mm-hmm. So now she's on the, what is it? Well, I just blanked, but she's in the medical device. They're not the manufacturer anymore. They're the supplier. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Nice. So she's medical supply. She's doing awesome. And yeah, that's what brought us down here, and essentially has enabled me to be doing what I'm doing. And she's kicking butt and taking names and supporting our family as I take on this adventure with CrazyFaceUno.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you like Florida?
I don't know why I was surprised. So actually, while I was on tour, this was my region. So my first tour
Deep South?
Yeah, Deep South. It was Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And I was in charge of like pretty much all our South Florida like part. And so like I live up the street, like not too far from like one of our contacts, like former contacts. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, like we had that hurricane scare, and I reached out to her and I was like, hey, like what do I gotta do? Like, if I got everything covered? She's like, I think you're in good shape. Like, don't worry. Yeah. So I was like, cool, sweet, thanks. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. It's one of those where you're like, wow, I never saw myself here, but here we are. Yeah, I really like it. I think the weather. I mean, I think I like the warm weather. Period. So like living in St. Paul, Minnesota that's fine. Like there's 8-9 months out of the year that it's awesome. It's really awesome. And then there's 4 months out of the year that just suck and are cold and I don't like. And I don't know. I like it down here. It's cool. I like being able to go to the beach and, sit there. We've gotten to be became a part of this like group that plays beach volleyball every Saturday. And it's kind of became this like friends group that we're able to kind of lean into, and it's been really awesome. And I was telling my wife the other day, I was like, man, I'd almost just want to stay here just to like be able to play beach volleyball every Saturday. like that's worth it for me. So yeah. It's cool.
That's awesome.
Where are you at these days?
I'm in San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah. I've been here for, coming up on 3 years, but it actually feels like a lot longer.
Yeah.
And I love it here. Like, I think I'll be in the Bay Area for probably the rest of my life.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where are you originally from?
I am from the suburbs of Seattle.
Okay. So like West Coast has always kind of been your spot. I thought you were from the West Coast originally. And San Fran for the last few years, you said. And
LA before that.
Okay, LA, yeah.
And so always a West Coast kid.
Yeah.
San Diego, stint in there, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
I love the West Coast. That would be my first choice for sure. If it was like, that was a hard part when we moved down here. I was like always looking for, I think I was always like, in the back of my mind, I was like, no, I know I'm not. Like, I know I can't expect the same things, but there was still bits and pieces that I was comparing to, life in San Diego and the West Coast, and kind of looking for that vibe, and that it's a unique space, and I don't know that we found
still
that.
Got palm trees.
yeah. I'm looking at one right now out my window. So
are there coconuts on it?
No, not on these.
Wow, I'm disappointed.
I know. Me too. I wish there was
false
coconuts.
Advertising.
I know. There's some on the other side though of the place, but
that counts.
Yeah. So I know you've had some pretty cool jobs since I've seen you last, and I'm excited to hear about those.
Sure.
Would you like to maybe bring us
Catch you up?
Yeah. When did you leave Invisible Children?
So I did 2 tours at Invisible Children as a roadie.
Yep.
Then I stayed afterward for another tour as a movement assistant. And then I left in it must have been Christmas time, 2012.
Okay. So we left at the same time.
Oh, we did?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I left the same time, that Christmas time, 2012. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So. And then after that, I was home for a few months looking for a job. Found a job back down in LA at a very small startup that was it was an e-commerce site, but it was all kind of socially responsible or social impact products.
Yeah.
And it was great. I feel like it was an idea ahead of its time. Worked there for 5 months. And then one week, the founder came in and said, we ran out of money.
Yeah.
Everybody's being let go. So that was a nice rude awakening.
Yeah.
But,
welcome to the startup world, I suppose.
Resilience, exactly. Most startups will indeed fail.
Yeah.
So checked that box. And then, struggled, unemployed for a few more months, and then got a job at Uber, actually, in LA.
Nice.
In the day before we all had it, before my parents knew what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And worked at Uber for 4.5 years, and that was actually what brought me up to San Francisco.
And this is
where Uber's headquarters is.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's Uber corporate, right? So you were
exactly.
Yeah, so not driving for Uber. You were working at the the main spots. Yeah.
Yeah. Worked on operations, and then moved to our product team, helping build the app.
Nice.
And then that was great. We can get into all of that if we want to. Sure. And then after that, ended up leaving, last summer, and joined a company called Samsara that is an Internet of Things sensor and kind of operational intelligence company. So It's kind of a mouthful. It's hard to describe what it does. But basically, we make hardware and software that businesses will use to get more visibility and data about their operations. So if you think about a lot of the businesses that kind of power our economy, like trucking and construction and food and beverage, a lot of what they do is on pen and paper, and they just don't understand a lot about their efficiency of how their machinery will work or how their drivers are performing. And so we'll make cameras and devices that plug into a vehicle that get you a bunch of data that basically help you make your business safer and more efficient and just operate more effectively. So
nice. And that's
Samsara? The product team. Samsara, yeah.
S-A-N or S-A-M?
S-A-M-S-A-R-A.
Nice. That's how I spelled it.
It's cool.
Cool.
It's not something I ever thought I would have gotten into or even really known about, because I went from a company like Uber where it's very personal, it's a consumer business, we all use it pretty frequently, to helping businesses and operators in industries that I had literally no exposure to, But it's actually kind of cool to see the way that this technology has helped kind of transform a lot of those old school like industries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the company has grown super fast. Like when I joined a year and a few months ago, there were 500 employees, and I think now there's over 1,500. So it's nice to be a part of that kind of scale.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like some of the devices you were talking about plugging in, like the fleet, management softwares,
exactly.
I'm sure. And so
you know about that stuff.
Yeah, I was pushing for that hard in 2012. And obviously that wasn't in the budget or in the future plans, which at the time I didn't realize. But yeah, I was working with several of those different companies because I was trying to do the same for our fleet. It was like one of those things where, man, if I could find out from San Diego office what was happening with Deep South's van, that they had a code that popped up or, hey, you're speeding every day, like stop it, like.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I'm just now thinking like what would have happened if we had that technology in the roadie vans? Like so we make these dashboard cameras that kind of connect into the vehicle, right?
Okay.
But what's funny is that our cameras have this voice coaching. And so if we know that like the vehicle is speeding or there was a harsh event or something, then the voice coaching comes on and it'll say like harsh event detected or please reduce speed. And it's actually my voice for our product. I lent my vocal talents. Yes, that's how you work at a startup.
Yeah, there you go.
And I was just laughing, like I can imagine so many roadies, speeding at like 2 a.m, racing to get to your next screening. It's like 12 hours away across the Midwest, like please reduce speed.
No, shut up, Hayley.
Yeah.
No, I know. I was really pushing for it because I think it would have really helped us, and eventually cut costs. We did a lot of preemptive maintenance on our vans, and it was pretty much like the last thing we want is our vans to break down. So if we had to spend a few extra, few $1,000s more to preemptively keep a fresh part on the van, that was kind of my thought process, which may or may not have been the right one, but it was at the time.
No, you were ahead of your time, Shane.
I was ahead of a lot of things. It's funny when I look back and a lot of the things that I think about and a lot of the comments that kind of come up as I talk about invisible children with other people is just the empowerment that we were given. So many of us were given opportunities that we never would be given anywhere else, and in such a good way. Like I think that invisible children and our leadership recognize talent, and there was often times when it was just like, hey, like I trust you, like let's do it, let's work this out together. And I think that's beautiful, and I think that's what really kind of drew us all in some ways and like made us a powerful team, because we leaned on each other, because so many times we were over our heads in what we were doing, but we had to trust each other. And I think that's important in business and in companies, and it's hard to replicate, it's hard to create, but that environment, that piece is really important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we were forced to be self-sufficient. I mean, as a unit, as a team, right? But when you're out there on the road, it's like, all right, we have 2 screenings to do today. We got to get everything set up. We got to get there on time. We got to meet the people. We got to do a good job. And it really forced you to rely on your teammates for backup. And
it's funny. I hear people talk about like going to, I had like my wife, she even had like a hiring, basically like a seminar, where they went and kind of tried to drum up some business and for a few different positions. And she was like, man, it's so exhausting. And I'm like, yeah, I get you. I get it. Like, I totally get that. Like, when you talk to people all day long, it's tiring. Like it does wear on you, and it wears on the body and your mind, but it's so fun.
And then you have to show up for your teammates, your host home too. So
there's a whole other
I feel like
element.
the norm. Yeah, it's like you get up so early, you're at a screening, you're talking to thousands of high school students, you're then going to a college, and then you have to like still be nice to your teammates and just love on them and be a little bit selfless even when you're tired and rather nap. And
looking back on that,
it was like such a good, challenging experience, but so good for us. And we were so young.
So young. It just showed us what's possible, I think,
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't think it didn't feel it feels bigger now, you know, like as I get older, I'm like, wow, like, man, we did a lot. Like, it was important. But at the time, like, you just didn't even think twice about it. You're like, this is what I do. You know, it was just like, that's what you do in the moment. Like, this is what we do. This is it. This is our job. This is what we're here for. And I think also the part that maybe sometimes not as forgotten, but overlooked is the importance of everything we did. You know, like we were like, we had a mission, we had purpose, and that purpose was important. And it's that why you're doing it. You know, you didn't second guess it necessarily if you were there, if your why was in the right place. You're just like, all right, we got to do this. We got to help people. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And when you say it feels bigger now, do you mean the stuff that you did personally? Like you really bit off a lot as a young guy, or do you mean like what we did collectively?
I think both, really. But I just think like, you know, going to a high school and talking, just literally building a relationship and talking to high schoolers at the time, it doesn't, it's dirty work, you know? And I don't mean that in like a bad way. I mean that in a good way. But it's like, it's getting down and dirty. It's like guerrilla marketing. It's, you know, I don't know. It's like, it's hard. It's fun. It's good. It's different. And when you're sitting there talking to a high schooler saying the same thing you said, you know, maybe a slightly different version, but you're repeating yourself a lot. You've got your little stock, but you're building these relationships and you're having these conversations with young people, high schoolers, college students, whatever, these young people that are hungry to help and to make a difference in whatever way they can. It doesn't feel as, it's hard to quantify, right? Like you don't know the impact that you're really making. And you do and you don't at the same time, if that makes sense. I don't know. It just, looking back, it's like, man, that was, every one of those people you talked to was important, you know? And similar to what I'm saying, like everyone has a story. Everyone's story matters. And I think that like those relationships, all of those people were important, each and every one of them, because they led to a collective whole as to who we were. I don't know. I think that you can look at a lot of things. You can look at life at just the smallest, minute details that impact your life big time, you know, massively later on down the line. I mean, decisions of what college you went to, decisions on what roommate you maybe had in college, or, you know, the decision to apply for a different place, or I don't know, even just leave your apartment one day and you meet somebody and you're like, if I wouldn't have left my apartment or I wouldn't have left where I live, like I would have never met that person. And I think that each and every one of those things, we take them lightly, and not that we have to take them too serious, but I think they have more purpose and meaning than we realize sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, I think all those thousands of one-to-one interactions, I think we talked about this at the time too, but it's like seeds that are being planted.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you never know when or even if that seed will start to germinate and grow later on. It might start to grow right then and there after that conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe just now, you know, the high schooler that we talked to back in the day is like starting to do something awesome for their community. And who knows if that conversation or their interaction with their roadie or the films maybe help that out.
Yeah. And even helped us sometimes, right? Those conversations even like affected us. And I was talking to Abby Moses. Do you remember Abby? Yeah. So
of course, she was my teammate.
Oh, was she really? Abby. I totally forgot. I don't remember anybody's like teams these days. So I was talking to Abby, and you know she's in Malaysia, and we actually did a whole podcast, and the recording messed up, and so we lost that podcast. So I have to do it again, which is really it's disheartening because it was it was like definitely one of my favorite podcasts. But she just talked about how she's like, I've grown up so much, you know, like I was such a baby then. But she talked about how these conversations that happened in the house, how she's like, maybe I wasn't a part of them, but I was listening. And like, you know, they've transformed her into who she is today, you know, and how those conversations, even just being around it, have helped formulate and helped her process through the woman that she is today. And I think that's really cool, and I think that's something that's important to remember and to recognize. And you know, even we talked about it beforehand, just the intentionality sometimes behind this podcast and the questions and this platform, that the way it's kind of structured is unique, and you don't have these conversations when you sit down in a coffee shop and just like chat with one another, you know. But yeah, I think that, you know, it's those conversations that we have when we are intentional about having conversations and learning about each other's lives, and maybe bypass the weather talk and let's jump into like, tell me something about you, you know, like those kind of questions. I think we bond, we like have a connection, you know, you learn things about each other, and even if it's unintentional, I think it's part of human, it's like part of our human DNA. It's just, I think we thrive and we desire to be connected to one another and to understand each other.
Totally.
Well, man, that was a I don't know, just a little detour around this conversation, but I love that. Like, I love those little conversations. Tell me a little bit about your experience at Uber and how that has, I don't know, shaped you and led you to where you are today at Samsara.
Yeah, sure. So Uber, interesting. Okay, so I walked into Uber like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, basically knew nothing.
Yeah.
And I ended up like becoming somewhat of a workaholic, especially for those first couple of years. It was just part of the culture there. We were growing and scaling like faster than almost like any other company had. Yeah. And it was kind of like the best of times and the worst of times. Yeah. Like I learned a ton about operations and about product and about working on teams and working on a like global scaled company. But at the same time, I was like getting sick all the time because I wasn't sleeping.
Running.
Yeah. Like I remember my first year, I started the year with mono, then I got strep throat, and then I got some sort of like other throat infection or whatever. And I went to the doctor, and the woman just looked at my chart and goes, "Wow, you've had a rough year."
Yeah.
Like, I know.
Yeah, like, thanks for reminding me.
Not sleeping, I'm working too hard, but like, it was definitely like hustle, you know, quote unquote hustle culture or grind culture, which I think was pretty glorified at the time. But you know, now that I've gotten a few years from that, it's not something that I would do again, I think, or at least it would have to be the right reason. And I don't, you know, I'm not as proud of that, I think, as I used to be. You know, it was kind of a marker of like, oh, I'm so career oriented and, you know, I'm doing so great. But I look at that now and think, what was I doing? Yeah. There were so many areas of my life that I neglected, you know, my health and working out and relationships. Like, I remember, you know, I started dating my now husband.
Congratulations,
2 weeks
by the way.
Before. Oh, thanks. Yeah. I had started dating him like 2 weeks before I started at Uber. And so basically that first like couple of years when I was at work, like on the weekends, because I would work on the weekends, I would be feeling guilty about not being with my boyfriend. And then when I was with him, I would feel guilty about not working because, you know, I had a never ending backlog of things to do, which is always going to be the case. And now I've learned how to pare that down and that expectation. But so I feel like that was a huge journey or transformation for me over the past few years. Was just learning how to kind of like understand what aspects of your life are important to you and then allocate your time to that, like in a proportionate way versus like over indexing on one area of my life. So
is that the advice you would give other people that are?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, it took me a long time to learn that, and I'm still learning how to do that effectively, even in my job today. But yeah, for me, it was just trying to like actually sit down and think, okay, you know, how much of my time do I want to spend on my career versus my, you know, relationships versus my friends versus family versus hobbies and travel and all of that. And just like checking in with myself. You know, I have to do that every 6 months or so to make sure
Yeah.
that how I'm spending my time aligns with how I want to spend my time, right? And I think for a while I really resisted that like reallocation of time. And
Yeah.
so, you know, if I didn't work on the weekends or if I didn't work in the evenings, I would feel guilty and feel like I wasn't sort of like living up to my potential almost. And now that's gotten a little bit easier. You know, I still worry about like, what if other people are going to get ahead? Which is
Yeah.
this
Right.
silly,
And that's the fear.
silly
That's the
thing.
part that's like,
Totally.
it's like you're going to miss out on an opportunity if you don't do X, Y,
Mhm.
Z, or yeah.
Yeah. It's like I grew up, you know, like striving for the straight A's and
Yeah.
trying to climb the ladder as far as you possibly can. And I think now I'm just much more comfortable and confident, like in one, just knowing what I value and being really in touch with that. And two, like acting on that, you know,
Yeah.
prioritization that I set for myself. And I think a big realization for me was just acknowledging that my my sort of desires or like where I wanted to spend time, that sort of mix had actually evolved throughout my 20s. You know, I think I was still like looking at my life and comparing it to how I would have thought I wanted to spend my time when I was 23. And like now that like kind of pie chart of where I want to spend my time is actually very different.
Right.
And like, that's great. I'm a human that's a work in progress, and I have different priorities now as I've gotten older, and I just need to be confident in that. So I'm still working on that for sure, but I've done a lot better job with that in my last role for sure.
Yeah, I think that was something I started to understand and learn a little bit more when I was at Invisible Children, and then it really kind of manifested a little bit later on, you know, afterwards for sure, of just creating healthy boundaries and knowing that it's important. I know that I'm not my best self if I overdo it. And I need those boundaries. I need some space, and just learning about myself. I quickly learned some of those things myself. And then I saw it in other people, you know, and just different jobs I had of people not having those healthy boundaries, just not having boundaries at all. And it's like, whoa, like, I don't want to be that. Like, I don't want to be you. And like, so I've got to like pull myself back and go, what is it, like you said, like, what is it that I value? What is it that I want? And, you know, I think, you know, although children are on the near horizon in my wife and I's current, you know, that's not something we're ready for, and we're not wanting at the moment, but that's something I want eventually. And I think it's just important to, you know, I think people make these ideas of like, well, when that time comes, I'll make that change. And that's easier said than done when you create these habits and you get in these routines, and, you know, your boundaries aren't set, and you don't know what you value and some of those different things. But I don't know, my family's important to me, and knowing, you know, like, hey, I want to be home. I want to be able to provide. I want to be able to help whatever I can. And I want to have that time. You know, there's, like you said, there's a time for everything, you know, and there's definitely going to be moments in your life and in my life that I have to go, hey, I got to do this thing, you know, like, sorry. And then we'll move on, you know, and we'll go back. But to be able to go back, to know what you value and what's important to you, it just keeps your baseline a little more, I don't know, a little more grounded, and helps you see through the chaos when it comes, you know? And yeah, I think that's important as well, for sure. And I think we see that a lot these days. I think we see a lot of people like just grinding, and that really hard putting their time into everything they have, and whether it's career, and in some ways it's like I think there's a time for that, right? I mean, especially when you're young. I mean, it's something that's almost expected, and I don't know if it has to be there, but I don't. You mentioned that you wouldn't necessarily do that if you could go back, but how would that affected you down the road? Do you think things would have still been? I mean, here's the thing: everything's gonna work out, right? it just may mean that things work out differently than you are right now, or the way you see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But things are going to work out, especially if you're going to continue to work and put in the time and like be good at what you do, you know? So
yeah,
I don't know. My question is, I guess, like, how does that fit into, you know, looking back, like if you were to
mm-hmm.
take a step back, would you, you know, would you be okay with the quote fallout of some of those different choices if you would have made things different?
Yeah. That's a really good, thought-provoking question. And, you know, I think, man, I may have chosen to still devote a large portion of my time to work because I didn't know anything. I like walked in, you know, I didn't even know how to like use Excel. Like the last time I had opened Excel was in high school.
Yeah.
Like literally not even once in college.
Yeah.
So I recognize all the good that came out of that time and of like devoting myself to work, and it did help me kind of like climb fast or grow fast in those early years. And it made sense at that time because I didn't have any other major responsibilities or sort of like things I wanted to achieve in my life. So I think I probably would have still spent a lot of time on my career, but I wish I had had the confidence to set boundaries. Actually, just backing up, I wish I had this self-reflection skills to know what my boundaries were. Then I wish I would have had more confidence in actually asserting those boundaries. Because I think when you're young and hungry and you're the lowest woman on the totem pole, you just feel like I'm going to take whatever comes and I'm going to figure out a way to get it done. And it is such a skill to learn how to say no and to acknowledge that if you say yes to everything, that means that you actually aren't going to be good at anything, most likely. And so you can actually do a much better job if you are selective about the things that you do take on. And for those things, you deliver them well. And that's something I understand now that I didn't understand back then. So you know, hindsight being 2020, I wish I would have been able to navigate those early years of my career with that wisdom. But you know, and it would have saved me from a lot of like stress cries, you know, at midnight in the office. I haven't cried at work in like, you know, at least 2 years, which
Good
is
for
great.
You. That's awesome.
I remember, oh my gosh, I just have to tell you something. I remember, this is like how ridiculous it got. Here's an example. In my last role at Uber, that was the worst. Like I loved it. I loved the team, but I was like, I had way crazy like expectations for myself. I didn't know what success looked like. And so I was always striving for something that was unattainable because I didn't know what the bar was. So I was like, if I just keep working, you know, using the hours that I don't have, I'll figure out what that bar is and then I'll feel validated. Didn't find that. And I remember being so stressed out one day and like probably sleep deprived mostly, that I was walking through the office from the bathroom back to my desk. And there were these two people in front of me who were doing like a walking one-on-one, like around the office, just catching up. And they were walking slowly. And I was furious because I was like, I need to get back to my desk. Like, how come they don't understand that they're in my way?
Out of my way.
They need to just like they're taking up the whole hallway. Like, I don't understand why they don't have any urgency in their life. Oh, and I think even in the moment I knew like what a crazy thought that was. Like, Hayley, why are you getting so like viscerally upset that like they're walking so slow that you cannot get back to your desk to go like work harder? And yeah, I think that just goes to show like how off balance I was and how I really needed to hit the reset button. And I think the thing that actually helped me is in that probably 6 months time span, I worked with 2 coaches actually, which I highly recommend. And one of them was Laura Welby.
Nice.
Do you remember her?
Yeah. I want to have her on one of these days and just kind of been.
You totally should.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
But
She's from Minnesota. Like, when I moved to Minnesota, she was like back in town with her family, and I went and had dinner with her family one day. And
nice.
Yeah, I haven't seen her since then. Awesome. So that was probably like 2013. Yeah, it was probably around that time.
So. A good 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all of the stuff that I was just talking about, like understanding how to set boundaries and understand your values. Like I can't take credit for any of that. That all came from, weeks and months of work with Laura and then with the other coach I had as well. And
well, and you asked me that
really
question as we were talking before we even started recording, and it's I told you then, and I'll tell you now, like, you're completely right. Like, knowing that is important, and otherwise you're just spinning your wheels and you're like in that rat wheel just running around.
Right. Chasing who knows what.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So.
That's crazy. Yeah. It's interesting. I think, even some of that I think is just a sign of maturity as well. And it's not, it is maturity, but yet it's not always, you know what I mean? Like, there's mature people that are still working their tails off doing the same thing,
right?
But
and by the way, I was going to say this earlier, if those people want to work their tails off, if that's the choice that they've made, like, good for them. I'm not suggesting that, devoting tons of your life to your work is a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding the thing that's right for you.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. Yeah. I mean, if that's what you want, for sure, that's the choice that you get, right? Yeah, my wife was talking about when she was, she was kind of negotiating her contract and for this promotion that brought us down to Florida. And, the conversation came up with, I don't know, someone. And it was like, hey, like, your job is to, like, do the best for your company, Like, that's what your job is. And my job is to, like, set the bar for what my value is, and this is what I'm worth. This is my value. This is what I deserve because this is my value, and, like, I'm worth it, And it's similar to kind of what you were saying, in a sense of knowing your value, knowing your worth, knowing what you want, and what it's kind of that drawing that line and going, hey, this is it. Like, hey, like, this is what I want. This is what I need. This is what's important to me. But it's having that confidence to, like you said, to stand up and say, like, this is it. And if you're not willing to see that, then is it worth it to me?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think it's like testing the boundaries too. And, we talked earlier about this, like, fear that I've had, and it sounds like maybe you've had as well, that like, we're somehow not going to be good enough, or other people will not give us validation about our work or whatever. And, like, I remember for my job now, I kind of, like, treated it as an experiment. Whoops, just dropped a headphone. Sorry.
No worries.
I treat it as, like, a little bit of an experiment with myself. Like, what happens if I live my life according to my values and I actually uphold those boundaries, as uncomfortable as it may be? Like, I wonder what kind of reaction I'll get from my coworkers. And I did that for about 6 months, had my first performance review, and it was great.
Yeah.
And, like, nobody thinks that I'm a slacker because I don't work on the weekends.
It's called respect.
It's like, I have awesome coworkers and we work very well together and we get our work done and we're proud of it. And I think that has, like, become a little bit of like a flywheel or like a positive spiral, I guess. And that it then gives me more confidence to kind of continue down that path and that way of living.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It's so cool. Yeah. That's cool to see and cool to hear, and, like, know that that's the direction you've been able to get to. You mentioned that you've used coaches. Have you, like, this is a maybe more personal question, but have you, like, gone to a therapist at all throughout any of this process and, like, worked with that, or just the coaching?
Just the coaching. Yeah. And the way
it's a form of therapy, let's be honest.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, like, the way it was described to me is, like, therapy is more about backwards looking sort of analysis, and coaching is more about kind of forward looking and maybe present focused, but more about kind of life design and understanding what your goals are and kind of finding a path to get there. Yeah. And for where I was at the time, that felt like it would be more useful or more immediate to me than I needed. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, I've thought about it, and, I think that's, I don't know, both therapy and coaching, I think, are both two things that I would value a lot.
Totally.
I am, I have people to bounce things off of. My wife especially, she gets my unfiltered commentary often.
Yeah.
She knows when to go, cool. and when to like push back and
Yeah.
when to tell me to go for it and when to tell me I'm crazy. But yeah, it's great. I don't know, like outside perspective is always helpful for sure. Well, Hayley, if we've talked a lot about, kind of current day. If we're to throw things back, let's go back to childhood. And
Oh, man.
I know. We're digging in deep now. You ready?
Okay.
Well, how would you describe your childhood? What was it like for you?
Oh, wow. It was suburban and happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm like one of the lucky ones,
Yeah.
like I have a really awesome family and set of parents. We're still together, and like I had a great upbringing in the same home. My parents are still there in the suburbs of Seattle, and
Yeah.
did gymnastics and fought with my siblings and went to Disneyland and did all the wonderful things. Got my first job as like, working at the theme park, like water park, which is inexplicably in Seattle.
Yeah.
As a teenager. And yeah, I did leave for college, so I feel like I'm a little out of touch with what Washington and Seattle life is like today. But no, I mean, I had a great upbringing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you? I know you said you had in gymnastics and some of those things. Like, what other interests did you have? Were you into any other athletics, or music, nature, movies? What were your things as a child that you were like, man, these were the bee's knees. This is what I like to do.
The bee's knees.
I know. I had to throw that in there.
Gymnastics was a big one. I was a swimmer. I did dancing for a little while. Nice. I was involved in like drama club, but not actually acting, just helping with stage crew. I kind of just liked being around that crowd, but I had no aspirations to act myself. I was a Girl Scout for a little while, and then I dropped that. We went outdoors fairly often. When you grow up in a place like Seattle, you don't let the weather get in the way of living your life. And so my dad would just put the raincoats on us and like push us out the door on a weekend, and we would go wander around the wetlands or go climb a mountain. And I loved that. I had dogs growing up, and so this is like kind of nerdy, but do you ever watch like Animal Planet, like dog competitions, like dog agility?
I can't say that I do very often, but I have, yes.
Okay, that's fair. But yeah, I used to do that dog agility training where you would like teach your dog to go through an obstacle course.
Nice. That's kind of cool though.
Race. It was so fun. I really loved it. Yeah, I made like a little obstacle course in my backyard when I was in late elementary school. And
I love that. Those are like the best memories. Those are so fun.
Totally.
I love that. Yeah. I recently caught up with an old friend from, that childhood time basically. And our families were always really close and lived apart from each other, but we always had these like big family get-togethers like once a year. And he was talking about how he was talking to his mom, and he's like, I can remember like where they lived. I remember this part. Like I remember this house. Like there was like things about his own like house and like family that he like totally forgot. But there's like certain things that he just remembered. It's always cool. I think that's what a story is, right? It's just this memory. It's this thought that we have, which is really cool. I don't know. I love those types of stories where you're like, oh yeah. What did you say you wanted to be when you grew up?
What did I want to be? I wanted to be a lion for a long time.
Nice.
Because Lion King came out, when I was like the perfect age for that movie, probably like 4 or 5 or something.
Nice.
So I this is embarrassing. Is this like embarrassing story time?
Because sure, go for it.
I used to, for like at least years of my life, the way that I like traveled and got around was via something that my family dubbed the animal walk. Which was basically me just like on all fours running like a lion or a cheetah.
Now it's like, we just tried to get some energy out of you, Hayley.
Oh my God. I was like such a wild child growing up. Like, that's like all of the stories from my family are usually me. All of the crazy stories that get told at toasts and birthday parties and whatever. So I had a lot of energy. I was quite precocious. So I wanted to be a lion when I was really little, and then I think that slowly morphed into wanting to be a vet because I was very into animals.
Yeah.
And then honestly, I don't remember after that. Like I think I wanted to do that for a while. I really liked my like AP bio class.
Sure.
And part of me still thinks like maybe the sciences would be a fun hobby or career.
Yeah.
Like I'm
That was always
reading
my
this
draw
book right
too.
now. Yeah, like all about the human body, and I've just like blown through it so fast because I find it so fascinating. So
I love
yeah,
that.
but then like fast forward to college where I came in as a bio major and dropped it after the first year because I almost failed
You're like, I'm
chemistry
out.
twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
just not
chemistry's
something that
rough.
came easily to me. And
Yeah.
although it was interesting, I like was not good enough at it to be successful and ended up finding something that I loved even more. So
That's
yeah.
great. What kind of a student were you like growing up? Like in middle school, high school? What kind of student were you?
Like straight A student.
Yeah.
You know, public school. It was like fairly not very challenging.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
You know, great schools, but it was high school. It was easy.
That's cool.
Except I was not that great at math. I've heard a couple of people on the show mention that.
Yeah.
I was not that great at math either.
I know.
We called it the Johnson family math curse.
Yeah.
My siblings aren't good at it either. So
Yeah,
Johnson's
I'm right there with you. It's funny because I like math, but like I don't know. I think that if it was explained to me differently, at times like there's definitely things that I'm like, man, I know that I was taught this, but I just don't know it, and I wish I knew it now because, you know, I mean, you talking about Excel. Excel is like, whether it's with words or not, there's like equations. It's like probability and statistics like mixed in with Excel and like mixed in with that. Like I love that. Like when I worked at Invisible Children, we were doing stuff with the, you know, the teams on the road and trying to analyze like how much of this shirt and this product to send to this team over here that was going through this every, you know. It was like, man, that was fun. I love that. Like that was awesome. But that's like probbing stats, right? And I just BS my way through that. I don't know. But then like in high school or whatever, I mean, algebra 2, I got passed. I don't know that I earned a passing grade, but I passed because I tried, and I got I had a tutor like my senior year, and my teacher was like, you know, just keep working with me, and you know we'll be fine. I got a D. You know, C's and D's make degrees, I guess, but I got through. I passed. I graduated. I got all my. Oh man, yeah, I'm the same way. Math was never fun. That stuff just didn't make sense in my head. I'm like, what are we doing here?
It took extra work, but it was I don't know if this is true for you too, but like it was a little bit of a nice like a humility kind of like wake up call, like oh, I have to work harder for this than other people do, and that's like teaching me to put in the necessary amount of work. Like I remember my dad the summer before 8th grade, he made me do an algebra or like a pre-algebra workbook, so I would have a certain number of like, you know, questions that I had to do every day, and I totally like resented him for it at the time. And I was glad even like within the first month of school that he made me do that because I already had this foundation that I could build off of. But, you know, I guess that's why you have parents to like help you teach the lessons that you wouldn't teach yourself.
Of course. How was your relationship with your parents growing up?
It was good. Yeah, it was great. Like I don't think I aspire to be like as close to my parents as maybe some other families do, or as my friends do. Like I don't ever think of my parents as like my best friends. Like sometimes my friends will say my mom is my best friend or my dad is my best friend, and I think that's like beautiful and great. But I always think of it as like more of a parent-child relationship. But I'm close to them, but that's kind of like as close as I want to be. I don't know if that sounds harsh, but
no, I don't think so.
But yeah.
I think
it's like I just want there to be a little bit of boundary there.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly just so that I can explore and become who I am and you know, feel safe doing that. But yeah, my parents are awesome, and I had a really healthy relationship with them and still do.
That's great. How many siblings did you have? Do you have?
I have an older brother and an older sister.
Nice. So you're the little one, you're the young one. Yeah. How did that go over? Is there some good banter back and forth when you all get together?
Totally. I mean, it taught me to like, definitely good banter. I think I forget. Do you have siblings?
I don't. I married. I mean, my wife has an older brother and a younger sister, and so like I get the banter whenever we're all together. I like hear it. So I know what that's about.
Yeah.
But I have a stepbrother and sister now. They just came along later in life, and we're not super close. I mean, I think as we get older, we become a little more close, and we have more things in common and more things to talk about. And we've been going on family vacations and more as I've gotten older as well, and just I don't know, getting to know each other. But yeah, growing up, it was just me. It was just me. So
yeah. Well, I was gonna say that like I feel like siblings are definitely good at teaching you life skills, like how to stand up for yourself and how to negotiate, when you're dumping out your Halloween candy and figuring out how to trade. And, my brother is 7 years older than I am, which is like, I think a fairly healthy distance.
Yeah.
Like definitely feels like we were at different stages in life growing up constantly, like we were never on the same playing field. And so, learned how to like fight in a world of scarcity where your brother's gonna take stuff from you and overpower you, and you always have to learn to like make alliances, and it's good. But you said like you're the baby, which is true, but I was just coming off of the holiday break. I feel like sometimes when I go home, it's so easy to fall back into those roles that you grew up with in a family. And like, even to this day, I'm 30 years old and sometimes I still feel like I'm the baby or treated as the baby when I'm back home. And also like, I could sometimes act like the baby when I'm back home, insulting my brother or whatever in some stupid petty way. So it's funny. It's like, no matter how old I get, I try to shed that and just kind of be my own person. But I think those family roles are really tough to shed.
Yeah.
They last.
Couldn't you argue that maybe is like part of who you are?
It's definitely part of who I am. But I think it doesn't acknowledge the growth and evolution that we've all gone through. We're all kids in our 30s now, and we don't have to treat each other like the roles that we played when we were young.
Like, come here, little squirt. Let me give you that noogie. Yeah. That's
my brother
interesting.
used to fart in my face.
Oh, what a good brother.
Thankfully, he hasn't done that recently.
My wife's always like, I wonder.
We're more sophisticated in our like trolling. But
yeah, there you go.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say my wife always like, because I pick on her sometimes, and she's like, I wonder what you'd be like if you actually had siblings, like if you'd still be the same, or if like you're just like, if it's coming out now as you've gotten older, because I like pick on her sometimes so hard.
Oh, man.
You know me, like I like to joke around and
you're very like
playful,
impish, I think.
Yeah.
You're a joker.
But, for sure.
It's like I feel like you have this like unreleased, pent up like sibling angst and
of course,
energy.
Yeah.
So, your poor wife.
I know. She's a saint. She really is.
Yeah.
She's great. Yeah. She puts up with all my craziness, my chaos.
Yeah.
But
that's great.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Did you have lots of friends when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think so. Although I'm realizing now that I was a bit of a lone wolf sometimes in a weird way. Really? Like I remember I worked at a summer camp for like a month through Young Life back in the day. Okay. And my sort of like leader, mentor person, like she had some sort of evaluation that she gave, and she said that I was confident in my independence. And I think that was a nice way of saying like, you're totally cool going off and doing your own thing. And I guess I don't really know what to make of that now, but I think I did have an interesting independent streak that was, I don't know, it was like, it took me a while to really grow into my extroversion tendencies. I think I was more introverted in like middle school and high school, and then had a little bit of a blossoming phase in college. And now I would very much consider myself an extrovert and will go out of my way to meet people and, and hang out and engage. But yeah, that was a little bit of a transformation.
Yeah, I found out more, going back to Invisible Children, I feel like I found out more about my like introverted tendencies like the longer I worked at Invisible Children, because we were just surrounded by people all the time, like in our apartments in San Diego. Yeah, I was like, man, I got to get away from, like, that was one of my big reasons for leaving in 2012. Yeah. I had an opportunity I probably could have pursued and just stuck around, who knows for how much longer, but But I was just like, I don't know that I need my own space. I need my own boundary. I need my own room to like decompress and like get away from people. And I just felt that. And I felt that burnout coming. And I was on that. I was right there. And I was like, I want to leave with a good taste in my mouth. And I'm getting to that point where I'm like starting to get a little resentful for certain things. And I don't want that. And, but I think that kind of was part of that boundary that I'm like, sometimes I just need my space and I need to be alone. And I've learned that even with my wife. And maybe you've learned some of those things through marriage too, of like just what each other needs. And, you know, it's some of those things where sometimes my wife just wants to come home and tell me all about her day. And I'm like, I want to hear all about your day. Sometimes it's a little too much right in the beginning. Like, you got to give me a couple minutes. And we just figured that out, you know, of how to work that out and be like, when I'm ready, I go, all right, tell me about your day, you know? Then hold on, because here it comes. But, you know, it's good. It's like just knowing what each other needs.
And asking for the things you need.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lesson that I learned at Invisible Children, was asking for the things that you need and not being afraid to do that, because when you ask, you allow somebody to meet your needs and serve you, right? You're like opening up this opportunity to help each other. But if you don't ask, they're not going to know what you need. They're not just going to give that to you, and you're denying them the opportunity to be helpful to you and be a friend to you. And I mean, we had to, like, what I loved about Invisible Children was like, you would learn these things in sort of an academic way, right? Like, we went through training for 6 weeks, and the brilliant, you know, leaders of Zach and Lauren Bailey and Bethany would and Talitha, they would like dump this wisdom on us. And then we then had 10 weeks on the road to go and actually practice those things and struggle with them and figure out how to apply them to our own lives. And when you lived in a house of 55 people, ages 18 to 23, and then we're stuck in a van of, you know, with 3 or 4 other people for 10 weeks, you need to figure out what it is that you need, and then have the guts to ask for it. Like, you need a morning off to sit at a coffee shop? Great. Like, we'll drop you off, and thanks for letting us know, you know? But it was that like repetition, and, you know, every week having a team meeting where we had to give constructive criticism. I don't know if you guys had to do that on your tours too, but like working that muscle, I think, was so valuable for me early in life.
It forced you to think internally too and reflect and to take that time to go, what is it that I do need? What is it that man, you are really frustrating me, and why is that? You know, like, you can't just settle with like, man, you're frustrating, and I'm not going to be around you anymore. It was you can't run away from it. And it's like, you know, the analogy was always given of like, it's like marriage counseling, you know, with like a lot of our training. And it really is. When you think about it, like, now that I'm married, it's like, man, if I get frustrated at my wife, I can't just like run away from it. I eventually have to come back and go, I mean, I guess you can, but it's not creating a very healthy relationship in the long run. But I have to go like, hey, this really frustrates me, and this is why. And I realize that this isn't like okay, and it's not acceptable for me to, you know, like respond or, you know, have this feeling. So I've got to figure out what that is, you know. And but that open communication, that open dialogue it's so huge. It's so huge. And I think it's just, you know, we learned that firsthand, definitely, at Invisible Children. I remember there was one of my Deep South teammates was like, man, I just don't, like, sometimes I just don't know if I'm okay. Like, right? Like, I'm still recovering. I'm still working through it, but I care a lot about what other people think. And I think there's a healthy amount of that, but there's also a confidence part that needs to be intact as well, of being like, you know what, it doesn't, like, be confident in who you are. And sometimes I rely a little bit too much on other people, and I look at this now and as I tell this story, but sometimes I just needed to know, like, are you upset at me? Like, I can't tell, you know, like, I'm really good at reading people, but I couldn't read her. And we just ended up figuring out, like, hey, we good? Yep, we're good. Cool. Like, sounds good, you know? Or like, let's talk later. All right, great. Like, then I know, like, we got to talk about something, you know? But I think that was like, those are huge moments of just recognizing, like, hey, like, I just need to know we're okay. Are we okay? And I do some of the same things today, even with my wife. Like, hey, you good? Like, are we okay? Yeah, we're good. Like, I'm just in my head. I just need to process. Cool, no problem. Let me know if you need anything, you know? And I don't know. Yeah, I attribute a lot of those relational skills for sure to Invisible Children and growing up, and that was like, man, you're forced into it. That was such a good time.
Yeah, you're forced into it, and I feel like it was like a cheat code or something that like let me skip ahead a couple years in terms of my like emotional wellness and like skill set. To me, it's like a skill set. Like, how do you have tough conversations, right? Like, how do you read other people? How do you have conflict in a way that's constructive and not destructive? How do you manage your own emotions? Like all of that. It made me so much better in my relationship with my husband, for sure.
For sure.
Still have to work at it, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I got a lot of the like kind of embarrassing like pitfalls, like falling on my face. I got that out of my system. Yeah.
Well, and it's even like the simple things, and I've talked about this, but one of the big questions that like kind of blew my mind that I never even like thought about it being a thing was like white or wheat bread. Do you remember that question? Like, I don't know why that was such a big deal, but like
was that an Invisible Children question?
Yeah, we had this like questionnaire thing that we kind of like went through. Like, do you like white or wheat bread? Or like what kind of bread do you eat? And it's like it's such a simple little thing, but like everybody's different. Like, oh yeah, like well I grew up with white, but I don't really care either way. Or when you're just like out but you like learn those things about each other. It's like little tiny things that are like, man, if I went to Subway and tried to grab a sandwich or a sub for my teammates. I know, it's those like little things where I'm like, oh, I brought you white bread. I don't like white bread. All right, well, sorry, but now I'm sure you know what your husband prefers, right? Like, but you don't even think about those things until they just kind of come up. And when you're forced to ask those questions, but being intentional about asking those questions, I don't know, that's a weird one that sticks in my head. I still remember our team had a meeting up in the attic in the garage. And that's where we asked that question. I was with Dan, Annie Long, and Elise Benusa.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's like it teaches you to be intentional about showing your love and your gratitude for each other too.
Oh yeah.
Like I can't tell you how many like so-and-so appreciation days we had. This was mostly back at the office, but we did like balloons with nice cards for Zach Barrows. I remember even on tour, like I think Abby Moses and my other teammates like Saul and Chris and Jane, they did like TL Appreciation Day where I went out to the van one morning and they had filled the van with balloons and decorated it with streamers, and like we went and got breakfast, and it was just like so sweet. But it just, I mean, especially in that tour, that was Coney 2012, we like really needed to give each other the love and support each other because it was so challenging. But it just like taught me how far a gesture like that will really go to like, bring you closer with somebody. Oh, for sure.
100%. Completely agree. So as you were looking into college, you said you you at least took a biology class. Was that part of your major? What was some of your decisions, your inspirations, I guess, for choosing the major that you did, which hopefully you'll tell us what that is too.
Sure. Yeah. So I went to Pepperdine, which is a small Christian school down in Los Angeles, and really loved it. Like, beautiful campus, small class sizes, like, awesome study abroad programs. Like, it was a great place to go to school. And I came in thinking I wanted to do ecology, and biology was the closest major. And so I did that, struggled through basically all of my science classes, realized that this probably wasn't going to work. And then my sophomore year, I studied abroad in Switzerland, in Lausanne, Switzerland, and studied French and a lot of like the liberal arts, kind of history and political science classes, and really enjoyed those, and thought I wanted to like kind of learn more about international development and NGOs. And so when I came back, I switched my major to be international relations, and that was what I ended up graduating with. And that kind of led me to Invisible Children, which was, similar sort of foreign kind of development and, social justice. And so that was what I did, right after graduating college. It was like kind of like a gap year, but post-college.
Sure.
But yeah, I think like I was very interested in the subjects, and I loved my classes. I also studied rhetoric and leadership. And that really came into play in Invisible Children when we were on the road, figuring out how to persuade an audience of 1,500 squirrely little high schoolers, try to get them to connect and, care about something and even take an action, right? Like action steps and absolutely everything that we said.
Yep.
That was highly valuable, training there. But it was great. I think Pepperdine was, I think because of that kind of Christian social justice nature, as soon as I graduated, like if I somehow randomly got the Invisible Children email saying, hey, apply to be a roadie, because I think I'd gone to one screening at Pepperdine.
Sure.
And I was like, this seems like something I could do. Like this is something my community would reward, right? It's like very focused on giving back and, being of service to others, and felt like it would be an adventure. So that was kind of how I wound up doing IC.
Love that. Did you have anybody, like, I don't know, high school, middle school, college, that were real inspirations to you that I don't know, gave you insight or gave you, I don't know, inspired you to be the woman you are today, or to go in a direction that you did?
Yeah, I think my sister is definitely an inspiration.
Nice.
She was, always involved in different activities. She was like the president of our sorority, and always had like great internships, and was beloved by professors and friends, and just was like she definitely had her life together in like all aspects of her life.
Sure.
And was just like such a great person. Even to this day, she'll do handwritten thank you notes or just random check-in, how are you doing notes to people from various, years and seasons of her life. And it was just one of those like intentional, loving figures. And so I think I think any little sibling does this, but I definitely followed in her footsteps growing up. I think she was probably pretty annoyed with that. But she learned trombone, and so I learned trombone.
Nice.
And, she was a Tri-Delta, and so I wanted to be a Tri-Delta.
Yeah.
She went to Pepperdine, and so I went to Pepperdine.
Sure.
And I think, looking back, I think, she was definitely an influence in a lot of those decisions. So, I think it would be her. And, I'll stop there.
Cool. Did you have, you switched majors to international relations. When did you know? Like, what was that process for you? Of like switching and like just realizing it.
I knew when I was about to fail my chem class.
Yeah. Ta-da!
That was not something I'd ever done in my life before, and did not want to do. I didn't end up failing it, but that was like very unlike me. And I think like it was more of a slow realization over those 2 semesters abroad. Like, I think there's things that I'm more interested in, that I'm just better at naturally, that I have more of an opportunity to thrive in. So I think it was sort of a slower realization, but I was very happy once I made that switch. But it's kind of interesting to think back now that I don't actually apply that in what I'm doing today.
Yeah, sure.
I somehow found my way into tech and product development and operations, and I'm I really like that. But I don't like regret what I chose to study. It was fabulous.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, I switched my major too, so I was a nursing major my freshman year. And
oh wow, yeah.
So I mean, similarly in a way, I guess, like I got to the end of I got about 6 months in, and I remember I was on the phone with my mom, and we were talking, and she's like, how's classes, like how's things going? And I'm like, oh, they're fine, like, like whatever, it's hard. Anatomy 1 and 2 is like, anatomy 1 kicked my butt, and I'm like, well, I got a C, like I passed, but I'm like, not super proud of that. Thank goodness I was dating the gal that I was at the time, and that's kind of how we met each other. She like saved my butt and helped me study and helped me like figure that stuff out. But yeah, I got there, and I was like, I just don't, that 6 month mark, I was like, I just don't think this is the right path for me. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I went to small Christian school like you, and like, I don't know what's next. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But until I've got like that confirmation that it's like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Like, I'm gonna keep going, I guess, until I know for sure. But I got to the end of that first year.
That's interesting, because there's such an opportunity cost, right?
Yeah.
you're looking for the signal that like isn't the right thing, but there's so many other things that you could be doing. And
Sure.
if you're not looking for that signal,
Right.
like you might end up going down the wrong path for a long time.
Absolutely. But isn't that
Yeah.
kind of the like Christian mindset? And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know where you are with that. And I've talked about it a lot on the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, but like that's just I don't believe the same things. I don't call myself a Christian anymore, and
Right.
but I think that was the mindset, right? You're like looking for the signal of like what's next, and I think you're completely
What's
right.
my
I never
vocation?
really, yeah. I mean,
That was big at Pepperdine. And
yeah,
man, I feel like I always, that always did not sit well with me. Like that there's one vocation or one sort of purpose. Like there's so many paths you could take in the
Yeah.
world, and there's so many ways of doing good and
Absolutely.
giving back. But,
and I see
like,
that
I don't know
now.
about you, but
I think that's like that's like
Right.
something that I figured out eventually. But yeah, go on. What were you saying?
yeah. I was just going to say, like, how do you feel about the concept of a 5-year plan?
It's interesting. I'm sure you're aware of Gary Vaynerchuk. No?
No, I don't.
You
I don't
should check
think
him
so.
out. He's pretty great.
Okay.
So I follow him on social media, and he creates these videos, and he's always talking about he's like New Year's resolutions. He was like, like they're stupid. Like he's like, no, I don't do them. He's like, I could be walking home in the rain in March and have like an idea that sparks of what I want to do, and he's like, then I'm going to do it. Like I don't need to do like set off a specific time necessarily to be like, okay, there's a new year, so now I'm going to do that. And that, I don't know, that's kind of like, I agree and I disagree in a sense. I think that there's pros and cons. I think reflecting back is really healthy and good, and kind of like projecting. I like the idea. I don't think you can be married to the idea, right? It's a guideline, I think. And so like I think that it's important. I'm a very goal-centered, goal-oriented person. Like I like to strive for things. And when I have those things in mind, 5 years, honestly, is really too far for me.
Yeah.
My wife and I, even like before we moved down here, like, well, what, in a sense, like, what is our 5-year plan? We asked that question of like, what do we want to be in 5 years? Like, do you want to live in Florida in 5 years? Like, I don't know. Do we want to have kids in 5 years? I don't hate the idea, but I don't know. We'll cross that path when we come to it. But I think it's okay to have those ideas and to work towards that until it doesn't make sense. But at the same time, I mean, that's also kind of looking for that confirmation bias in some ways of, like you were just talking about, of when I was like looking for this sign that I wasn't supposed to be doing what I was doing, and I think I would have been happy being a nurse. That's the thing. Like, I still think I would be happy being a nurse. Like, I think there's things that I would enjoy about that. I think there's a lot of things I would hate. I'm happy that I'm not doing that. But, at the same time, I don't know. So this is a really long way around the whole idea of like, what do you think of a 5-year plan? But I don't hate a 5-year plan. I just don't think you can be married to it. I think you have to like be willing to reevaluate that and go like, this isn't working. This isn't the 5-year plan that I really want to do, and take a look back at that and go, yes, that's still true to what I want to do. And no, that's not. And I'm going to alter it this way. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with most of that. I bring that up because I got asked that question, as I'm sure you did.
Oh, yeah.
Every few months, especially when you're a high school senior, all throughout college.
Job
like
interviews.
You have to have a great job interviews, right? You have to have a great pithy answer with your professors and your career counselors and your internships.
Yeah.
And even back then, I remember really resenting that question.
Oh,
and,
I totally resented it.
I would BS some answer, like, yes, in 5 years, I want to be blah, blah, blah. But
I didn't get it. I didn't get a job.
A bullshit concept.
Yeah, I didn't get a job because I told the truth. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. I was sitting there in a job interview. Amazing. I was one of like, I think 3 people that they were going to like pass through, or 2 people that they're going to pass through the next like phase, basically talking to the board. And they asked me, I don't know that it was specifically that, but I have a pretty darn good feeling that was the question. It was like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, I don't know. If you asked me 5 years ago, if I saw myself sitting here with this interview, I would have told you you're crazy. Like, I had no idea. So like, I can't say like where I'm going to be in 5 years, but I this is what I want right now, you know, and that's kind of where I went. And I think some people like that, some people don't. But I don't know. I have trouble like BSing my way through some of those things. I'm like, this is what you get. Like, this is me. So I don't know.
You know, I think that's great too. And I doubt you regret being truthful in the moment. But
no, I don't think I wanted to work for them now that I
right,
look back.
Exactly. But yeah, it's like for me, I think the way that I always tried to guide myself and answer that question was forget about 5 years. To your point, like I could never have predicted at any point in the last like 8 years, like what I would have been doing, you know, like like every step of the way was kind of unfolded one step at a time in a way that I could not have foreseen. And for me, I just asked myself, am I challenged in what I'm doing? Do I believe in the kind of greater kind of cause or purpose of the org or the company that I'm a part of? Am I being challenged? And do I like the people that I work with? And am I learning new things? And if those things are true, then great. Like keep doing it. It's working for you. Yeah. And if not, like, you know, if something starts to slip, then it's worth looking around and saying, oh, what else might I try, or what else might I get involved in that can give me a little bit more data and figure out if I should make a switch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like
I love that. Yeah, that's
the
great.
whole idea of the 5-year plan is a no-go. But you brought up New Year's resolutions, and oddly enough, I love New Year's resolutions.
I love them too, but I'm not married to them necessarily, but I think they just give me this like fresh restart where I'm like, okay, like, but I think I don't take a lot of time out of my like year or my life in a lot of ways to like sit back and go like, oh, how did this work? And how did that work? And like, what do I want to do? You know, and I think it just gives me, it's just an appropriate time for me to look ahead and go, what do I want to accomplish? Like, and I look at it more like that, like accomplishments. What do I want to accomplish?
Totally.
You know, like, so it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. But you love them. Do you have some for this year that you're willing to share?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Going back, it's like you mentioned kind of this like fresh start effect, and that is a real thing. Like I even at the micro level, like I love sunrises more than I love sunsets. And there's just something about like waking up in the morning. I'm definitely a morning person, and knowing you have your whole day ahead of you. It's filled with potential. Like you could have anything happen that day, and like you are in control. And I love that feeling. And I feel like New Year's is just like a little bit bigger scale, but it's like an opportunity to hit the reset button and think, hey, like what do I want to accomplish this year? Or what do I want to work on this year? And maybe I don't accomplish it, but at least I've got some direction, and I've got a goal and like a path, right? And so I do try to set New Year's resolutions every year. And this year I did something a little bit different.
Okay.
I was kind of inspired by like reflecting on being 30. It's like, you know, a meaningless milestone, but a milestone that we acknowledge nonetheless.
Yep. And I'm 32, so I know that 30 mark was a big number for me.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I kind of was taking stock of like, oh, how good am I at being an adult right now?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I feel like 30 is like, you are very much officially an adult.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I didn't feel like it in my 20s. I should feel like it now. And so, and I do think over this last year, like I got a lot of those like adult check boxes checked. Like,
sure.
I learned a lot more about managing my finances, and, you know, I got married 2 years ago, and like, that's going well. And, you know, we've been living in San Francisco for a few years, and we know our neighborhood, and like, I can kind of check that box. And I was thinking through like, what other projects or things could I aspire to now? Like,
Sure.
I'm feeling good about where I am, but like, what's next? And so I started thinking about like essential life skills that we should have maybe by the age of 30, or at least by being an adult. I don't know if you saw this, but I was like collecting ideas on Instagram from people. Like, what would you put on your essential life skills list? Yeah. And it was such a fun exercise.
I'm going to look that up now that you said that.
I'll send you the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up coming up with a list of 100, and it's everything from very practical skills, like learning how to drive in snow and ice. And you being like a Minnesota Midwest guy, could definitely check that box, but I could not. Yeah. It's like survival skills. Like, can you make a fire? Like, do you know how to chop wood? Yeah. And I think I could do that. Yeah. Or, you know, a lot of like civic skills. Like, do you know how to contact your congressional representatives? Thanks to Invisible Children, I know how to do that. Yeah. Or do you know how to vote? Right.
Not
So
well, but I do know how to.
you know how
No,
to do
I
your
do. I
research.
just.
But, and then there's like a lot of the soft relational skills. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can you listen without giving advice? Or
Mm,
one that I really loved was like, can you show up for people in hard times? If they're going through a crisis or grief or something, like,
yeah.
do you know how to do that? Or like, do you know how to be an ally to a marginalized group? Like, I think I know how to do that, but
Yeah.
there's probably some more that I can learn about how to do that and then
Yeah.
maybe apply that. So yeah, so we
Wow.
ended
I'm
up coming up
excited.
with a list of 100 things, which I can send you.
Yes, please.
And the kind of bar that I set for myself was like, I can give myself credit for this skill if I could teach it to somebody else without looking it up, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
one of them is like, can you change the oil on a car? Like, maybe, but like if I had a YouTube video, like I could figure it out. But like, I definitely could not teach you how to do that. So like, I don't get credit for that one.
Yeah.
And I think at the most generous, I think I got like just over 80 of those skills. But then there's a lot that I should work on. And
That's
so
cool. I love
I think
that.
my next step is to look at that list and start to expand on, okay, if I was teaching somebody, like what would those principles be?
Yeah.
One of them on the list is like having self-control. Like, do I really know what the principles are for having self-control and like how to tactically do that in your life? So yeah, I just thought that was a really fun exercise and
I love
a
that.
different way of looking at like the New Year's resolution, kind of fresh start effect. And then I have traditional resolutions too, like,
Sure.
travel things that I want to do or other things. But
I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome. Like that fires me up. I'm excited to see that list. I'm excited to like look through that. I love lists, and I'm terrible at making them. I'm terrible
so
at
you
making
just need
them.
to be given them.
Yeah, sometimes. Like I wish I just had like a robot that could follow me around and be like, "Oh, hey, like write this down," like because I don't know why, like I just struggle to like get out a pen and paper and go, "Oh, do," or if I do, they're like 4 of them and they're like all over the place and they never like come back to me or I never look at them again. It's like once I put them down. But yeah, I love lists. That's a random little side note there for you to take and do whatever you want with it.
Well, what's the point of your list? I think you need an intention for your list.
Yeah. With CrazyFaceUno stuff, like things I want to do. Like I started making a list of things like kind of like we were talking about, like what it would success be or like what do I want, where do I want this to go? And sometimes I don't know, but there's some fun things and maybe offline we can talk about that a little bit, but there's some fun things I think would be really cool and really fun to do and like to branch out and to go into, but that have been kind of thrown around in my head. And it's also like knowing, is this the time for that, or am I being a little too aggressive with where I need to be and how can I stay focused on the mission? But I think lists sometimes can help you through those different questions, and and I keep this like checklist in my head, but it's not the same. So
right, yeah.
Well, we are getting close to the end here, Hayley, and I have my ending questions, which if you think any of the other ones are intense, they just get more intense. So I know you've heard some of our podcasts and you've listened, so hold on and we'll see what we can do with these. You ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
So the first one would be, what are you most proud of to date? Yeah, I know.
Wow. That's a big one. Most proud of. I think it would be, honestly, I mean, I know we've talked about it a ton, but is it a cop-out answer to say Invisible Children? And I can explain why. I think it's because when I look at where we are in the world today, as it relates to politics and some of the biases and prejudices that we're seeing kind of rear to the surface again, I feel like the work that we did at IC of fostering these micro interactions, one-to-one, right? Like, I'm going to sit with this middle schooler and I'm going to talk to them about Uganda and a crisis and what they can do to be a part of it and why going to 2012 wasn't a scam and learn about their life. And, they've never met somebody from outside this country. And just like fostering that sort of empathy and familiarity at the very micro level in communities where, like I toured Texas and Louisiana, and Wisconsin and mostly Chicago, but like we would go to some really remote schools in small towns that did not have the kind of like exposure to different causes and peoples and cultures that I do in San Francisco, for example. And like to be able to bring that to them was super powerful, because that is what will change people's minds, right? Like that is what will give them empathy and break down the barriers of us versus them, or America first versus the rest of the world.
Sure.
Like it is that kind of interaction. And so I've been like yearning for something like that today, you know, because it's kind of tough to read the news and not know what to do about a lot of that prejudice. So
isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I mean, that's like, that's something I struggle with big time, is like, I hit the headlines of my Apple News on my phone, and that's about it. Like but beyond that, like I honestly don't know what to do. And it's sometimes, that's a whole nother thing. But
this is you doing something, right?
This is, and that's part of it for sure. 100%. This is my like me going, hey, there's a lot of bullshit out there. There's a lot of like dark, gross things that I don't like, and I don't agree with, or I don't see. And it doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum and what you feel. Like we're all human beings, and we all deserve each other, and we all need each other, and we need to make a difference and help each other and do good. And you know, that's 100%. You're correct. But I don't think it's a cop-out answer, Hayley. I mean, maybe Invisible Children people would say that, but I don't. Because I think it's the same, and for probably similar reasons, but different reasons as well. Like I'm right there with you. Like it's one of the things I'm most proud of for sure is my time there, and the person that it allowed me to grow into, and it showed me what I was capable of. And I hold that as a measuring stick for me still, I think, and not in a unhealthy way, but as like, hey, you're capable of a lot of things, and things you didn't know you were, and don't be afraid to go after it. But my follow-up, I guess, let's see. I lost track of where I was, sorry. My other question is, oh, yes, there it is. Do you ever think about your legacy?
I do. Yeah, I do. I don't think about it in a long time frame or a long time scale, I think. Like, to me, legacy is always associated with, like, what do you want on your tombstone? You know, like, where do you want your epitaph to be?
Absolutely.
And that's, like, way too scary and big picture. So I try to think about it more in the micro sense, like what do I want my legacy to be at my current job, or in this season of my life, or in this like relationship or interaction. And so I don't know that I've done a good job of like crafting that legacy, you know, very actively. But I try to get involved and like try to sort of like help the next generation, I guess, when I can. Like this is a very small way, but for the last few years, I've been a part of an organization called Built by Girls that pairs up young professionals, whether male or female, with young women who are in high school or college who are interested in careers in tech. And so that's been a way for me to like learn from them, but also share some of the things that I've been able to learn throughout years of experience and working with coaching. And I think that's a small way to leave somewhat of a legacy, but I don't know what the broad strokes would be yet for my life. Yeah,
that's cool. That's a really cool program. I'm excited to hear that you're a part of that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is on that level. We're definitely getting towards the end. We got like a minute and a half here, but I think legacy and something that I want to, I don't know, share with the world that's listening, but it's about how you make people feel. It's not necessarily about the things you do. And when people reflect on your life, it's how you made them feel. And I think that's a part of that legacy. And it's something that I start to reflect on. And I don't even have an answer to that question, to be completely honest. Like I obviously think about it, but I don't know how or what, or even, you know, what I'm striving towards. But I know that it's how I want people to feel something, you know, and I don't know, that's part of it. Last question. We're down to the very last minute here. So looking back, what advice would you tell little Hayley?
Oh, what would I say? I would say, Hayley. Oh my gosh. I don't know. This is a hard one.
Oh no.
Probably be a bit more confident knowing yourself and advocating for yourself. Going back to a lot of what we were talking about earlier with just knowing your values and not being afraid to speak up for those values.
I love that. I'm going to close this out right here.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all so much for listening. I appreciate you all. Love ya.
Yeah.
Peace.